Welcome to the Deep Dive, the place where we take a monumental stack of sources and distill it all down to the essential, fascinating takeaways you need to be well informed.
Today, we are undertaking a spectacular deep dive into the world of Baroque music. This is a period roughly spanning from 1600 to about 1750.
And it is arguably one of the most dynamic, foundational, and just frankly dramatic eras in the history of Western classical music.
It really is, and that timeline is so important because the Baroque period, it doesn't just appear out of nowhere,
Right, it follows the refined, complex voice of the Renaissance.
and it completely sets the stage for the elegant symmetry of the classical period that comes next.
With that little transitional gallant style sitting right in between.
Exactly. And what makes this era so critical isn't just that it produced great composers like Bach and Handel. It formalized the entire musical system we pretty much still use today.
So we're talking about common practice tonality, where music is built around a home key.
That's the one. It also massively expanded instrumental virtuosity. It laid the groundwork for the modern orchestra and established the major genres we know.
Opera, oratorio, the concerto, the sonata, all of it.
All of it.
But before we even get into the sound, we have to talk about the name. Because Baroque sounds so grand, ornate, dramatic.
It does now.
Oh,
But it was originally a massive insult.
really?
Profoundly derogatory. The term is overwhelmingly believed to come from the Portuguese word barroco.
Which you mean?
It literally means an irregular pearl or an oddly shaped pearl.
So something beautiful but flawed, misshapen.
Exactly, imperfect, and critics really used it as a weapon. In 1734, there was this anonymous satirical review of an opera by Jean-Philippe Rameau.
And the critic just slammed the music as du Baroque.
He did. The main complaint was that the music lacked a coherent melody. It was filled with unremitting dissonances.
This is constant collection.
And just too dense, too complicated. It was also a philosophical term, barocco, which meant an unnecessarily complicated or illogical argument.
That's a phenomenal connection. So in their minds, the music wasn't just complex, it was philosophically illogical.
Yes. And Jean-Jacques Rousseau piled on later, in 1768, calling it confused, harsh, and unnatural.
It sounds like that classic reaction whenever new, difficult art emerges. It's too much.
Precisely. It was an academic put-down. But today, Baroque is just this, convenient catch-all for an incredibly rich period.
So if they thought it was too complicated, what was the music trying to do? That brings us to the philosophical revolution behind it all.
Absolutely. Composers at the time, they were reviving ideals from ancient Greece and Rome. They believed music was this potent tool for communication.
Powerful enough to arouse literally any emotion in the listener.
Yes, they wanted to move the soul. And this intense focus on emotion led to a clash of styles that redefined everything, the Seconda Pratica versus the Prima Pratica.
Okay, break that down for us.
So Claudio Monteverdi introduced this idea around 1605. The Prima Pratica, the first practice, that was the old school, Renaissance polyphony.
Where the music's rules were the ultimate authority.
Right. Strict harmony, counterpoint, that took precedence over everything, even if it made the text impossible to understand.
But the Seconda Pratica, which dominated the Baroque, it flipped that script.
It did. Here, the expression of the text meaning, the raw emotion, that was more important than the rules. The music had to serve the text.
Even if it meant adding, say, a shocking chord to highlight a word like grief or death.
Exactly. And there's this incredible anecdote about the composer Claudin Lejeune.
This one really shows the physical power they thought this music had.
It does. A scholar wrote that one of Lejeune's errors caused a gentleman in the audience to get so angry, he put hand to arms and began swearing out loud. Wow. But then Lejeune immediately had another air played, and that second piece instantly rendered the gentleman as calm as before.
So for them, this wasn't just entertainment. This was a real physical demonstration of the power and force of melody, rhythm, and harmony.
They believed they were manipulating your internal state through sound. And to do that, the entire structure of harmony had to change. This is the big one. The shift from modality to modern tonality.
That sounds technical, but what does it mean for how the music actually sounds?
It means we moved from a system of, ancient kind of ambiguous scales, the modes, to a system where music focuses on a central key, a single home note.
Which gives the music a much stronger sense of tension and release.
A much stronger pull. You can move away from that home key to create drama, and the return to it feels conclusive, satisfying.
And the genius invention that made all this possible was the basso continuo.
It really was. The era is sometimes called the age of the thorough bass, for a reason. Composers would write out the bass line, and then just place numbers and symbols above the notes.
The figures. So it wasn't a fully written out score for the harmony players?
Not at all. Those numbers were instructions for the keyboard player, the harpsichordist or organist, telling them what chords to improvise.
Which must have freed up the composer's time immensely.
It did. It guaranteed a clear harmonic foundation, but it let the composer focus on the complex, virtuosic, melodic parts for the soloists.
And that stable foundation fueled the rise of a new texture, monody.
Yes. If Renaissance polyphony was like a committee meeting with everyone talking at once...
Then monody was the TED Talk.
Exactly. A single, clear, melodic voice with a simple, subordinate chordal accompaniment. It was crucial for making sure the text could be heard clearly and powerfully.
So we have the philosophy of motion over rules and the technical tools. Where did all this first catch fire?
Italy. It was the undisputed incubator. New development started there, and it would take, 10, 15, sometimes 20 years for them to be adopted elsewhere.
And we start in the early Baroque, say 1580 to 1650, with the Florentine Camerata.
A group of thinkers and musicians who explicitly rejected the old polyphony. Their discussions led directly to the invention of opera.
With Jacopo Peri writing the very first ones, Daphne and L'Eurydice.
Yes, and this new genre just became the engine for the whole Baroque movement. Think Monteverdi, Gabrieli, and Heinrich Schütz, who brought the new style to Germany.
Then we hit the middle Baroque, from 1630 to 1700, the age of absolutism.
And the French court of Louis XIV is the perfect example of music as political power. Jean-Baptiste Lully became incredibly powerful.
Not just by composing, right?
No, he actually purchased patents from the monarchy to be the sole composer of operas for the king. He locked down the entire market.
Talk about brand control.
Yeah.
And he was also one of the first real conductors, famously beating time with a huge, heavy staff.
A very commanding and very loud rhythmic framework. Meanwhile, in Italy, we saw the rise of instrumental music, especially through Arcangelo Corelli.
Corelli is a massive figure for structural reasons.
He was a pioneer of the concerto grosso style, but crucially, he was one of the first composers to publish his music widely all across Europe. He was an international star.
And his student was Antonio Vivaldi.
Who takes us right into the late Baroque, 1680 to 1750, the high point. This is the era of Vivaldi, Telemann, Handel, and of course, Johann Sebastian Bach.
But even then, that geographical lag was still happening.
It was. While German composers like Bach were perfecting this incredibly dense counterpoint, the Italians were already starting to shift towards the simpler, lighter, gallant style around 1730.
Kind of anticipating the classical era?
Right. And Bach, well, he either missed the memo or just decided to ignore it. He kept writing in the rich, complex Baroque style right up until his death in 1750.
Let's pivot to the forms and structures that define this sound. At the heart of it all was a love of dramatic contrast.
The style concertato, you see it most clearly in the concerto. The concerto grosso, perfected by Corelli and Bach, alternates a small group of soloists, the concertino, with the full orchestra.
So it's a dialogue, a sonic battle between the small and the large.
Precisely. And then the solo concerto pits a single virtuoso against that full ensemble. And it was Vivaldi who really established the standard three-movement structure for that. Fast, slow, fast.
Now, for smaller works, we have the sonata.
And you have to distinguish between two types. The sonata da chiesa, the church sonata, was formal, 4 movements, slow, fast, slow, fast.
And the sonata da camera, the chamber sonata, was basically a series of dances, like a suite.
Which brings us to the dance suite itself. A huge form, but meant purely for listening, not for dancing.
And to really get the suite, you need to know the core 4 dances.
Absolutely. First, the allemande. German origin, moderate tempo, usually the opener. It has this kind of noble, flowing character.
Okay, number 2.
The courante. It's in triple meter, can be fast or slow, but often has this light running feel. The name literally means running.
And third is the really important one, the sarabande.
So important. A slow Spanish dance, also in triple meter, but it's defined by this heavy emphasis on the second beat. It gives it this halting, incredibly serious feeling.
A sense of gravity. And to finish it all off,
The gigue. Upbeat, lively, from the British Isles. It's related to the gigue, and it's almost always the energetic finale.
And it's amazing that theorists even assign personalities to them. Johann Mattheson wrote in 1739 that the minuet was moderate gaiety, while the sarabande embodied ambition.
The music had character.
Now to the vocal genre, starting with opera. We know it came from the Florentine Camerata, but the big structural shift happened in 1637.
That's the year the first public opera houses opened in Venice. Suddenly, the audience wasn't just private aristocrats, it was the ticket-buying public.
Which changes everything. The focus shifted to what the public wanted.
And what they wanted was the spectacular, emotionally powerful solo song, the aria. That's where a singer could really show off.
A showstopper. And that came at the expense of the recitative, the speech-like part that moves the plot along.
Exactly. The recitative moves the story, but the aria is the reason you bought the ticket,
Then we have the oratorio.
which is basically an opera without the staging. It's an extended musical drama on a religious subject, but performed without scenery, costumes, or action. Think Handel's Messiah.
Perfect for a church or concert hall. And finally, the cantata.
It started small in Italy, but what Bach did with it in Germany was transformative. He turned it into a cornerstone of the church service, with recitaves, arias, and massive choruses.
Now, this next part is crucial for you, the modern listener, because if you listen to a recording of Bach from 1960 and then one from today, they can sound radically different.
And the first major reason is pitch. We're used to A being 440 airs. That standard was only set in 1939.
So in the Baroque era, there was no standard pitch. The same piece could sound a half-tone lower in a French court than a German church.
Absolutely. And when modern ensembles use historical tuning, say A at 415 airs, the music sounds darker, mellower. It completely changes the character.
Then there's the timbre, the actual sound of the instruments.
Right. You have the harpsichord, of course, but the string instruments, violins, cellos, they use gut strings, not modern metal-wrapped ones.
Which creates a mellower, sweeter tone.
A much warmer, less edgy sound. The whole ensemble just blends differently.
And finally, the element that really separates historical performance from a modern one, improvisation.
This is huge. Baroque scores have surprisingly little information about articulation or dynamics. The score was just a framework.
So professional musicians were expected to be amazing improvisers.
You had to be. They were constantly adding extensive ornamentation trills, mordents, fast runs, right there in the performance. If you couldn't do that, you just weren't a professional.
So what does this whole revolutionary period mean for us now?
The legacy's just massive. So many genres we listen to. From opera to the concerto, the blueprint was established between 1600 and 1750.
And the influence goes way beyond classical music. You see 20th century composers like Stravinsky paying direct homage to Baroque styles.
And you can even hear those ideas in popular music. The way a jazz ensemble moves from the full band to a tight solo group.
It's like a modern concerto grosso.
It's the same principle.
Right.
And famously, when heavy metal guitarists want to show off their technical skill, they often turn to Bach and Vivaldi.
So the virtuoso solo, enabled by that stable basso continuo, it lives on.
It's the ultimate irony, isn't it? An era named after an insult for being too complicated became the structural foundation for almost all Western music.
To wrap up, let's go back to that ultimate contradiction. Bach. He was the father of the late Baroque, the one who refused to shift to the simpler, gallant style.
And he ended up getting the same exact criticism that Rameau got decades earlier. In 1737, the critic Johann Adolf Scheib attacked Bach's music.
What'd he say?
He complained that Bach's style was turgid and confused, and that he darkened their beauty by an excess of art.
An excess of art. He basically said Bach's music conflicted with nature.
He did. He thought it was too convoluted, too unnatural. And that complaint is what really defines the end of the Baroque. The music wasn't bad. It was just seen as too demanding, too intellectual for the simpler tastes of the coming classical era.
And that leaves a really interesting question for you to mull over. When you listen to Bach's complex counterpoint today, do you agree with Scheib's critique? Do you think it is an excess of art?
Or do you find that very density, that complexity, is the thing that makes the Baroque era so revolutionary and so enduring? Something to ponder. That's been our deep dive into the magnificent and sometimes misshapen pearl that is the Baroque era.